3, 2.
What? John's invisible. Oh no.
We are live, but John's invisible. Let's we're gonna get you here. Sit tight, John. We're gonna show you on stream.
There you are.
And then here you are. So John, I've not been on the stream for a little while. Been traveling, doing some other stuff, but it's good to be back. I hear you have a question for me to start off our stream today. I hate getting ice cream. I hate getting ice cream so much because, one, everybody wants to get ice cream at like 9:58 and the place closes at 10. So you're walking up to the front window. There's some high school kid that's just grumpy that they're out in the sweaty, nonsense. They've been sniffing cotton candy flavors for their 4-hour shift. And so they're grumpy. They're caked in, butter pecan. And they're like, all right, what do you want? And you've got nothing but like a bunch of kids and families, a bunch of stressed out dads like me being like, just get the food. Come on, like, hurry up. It's 10 o'clock. Let's get out of here. And then these clowns at I'm being mean to ice cream people, but like they give you like the smallest container so that the scoops look big, So they give you a little small bowl. They dump. They use like I don't know what their shovel is there. It's not an ice cream scoop. It's like I don't know. It's like something it's like a salad bowl, kicking on this stuff. And then you turn around, you hand this to like an 8-year-old. They get all hocked up on sugar, and then they're getting all sticky, man, and it's all bleeding over the edge. And then it costs you like $9,000. Like, it's just there's nothing good about it, man.
Whatever. 2, you're complaining about
You're Eddie?
the scoops are too small.
Oh, John, you're getting some mic action. John, say 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Hello.
How we doing? LPK425, good to have you on the stream. Can you hear his mic now? All right, John.
Hello?
John, you're good to go. You were saying I was blaming the lines and the location and not ice cream itself.
Yeah. So you're okay, and then you go off. You're saying that what do you say? The bowls are too small. The bowls are small to make the scoops look bigger.
Yeah. And
then you complain that they give you too much. So which is it? Is it too much or is it too little?
No, they definitely give you too much. Like, you can't just get like a small, like tiny, like thing. Like, I want like a shot of ice cream. Like, just give me a little like gunk, and then I'm done. Right?
And then
That's
you're
it.
saying it's like $40.
Yeah, dude. Somehow it's $40.
Small Blizzard is like $3.50.
Getting a Blizzard is not getting ice cream. Going through the drive-thru at Dairy Queen. I'm talking. No, you hear me? I'm talking about that little mom and pop shop with like the striped awning that has one walk-up counter, and to get there you have to stand in a line the size of a Taylor Swift concert. And then once you get up here, here's the worst thing. Nobody in the line looks at what they want until they get up to the counter. So this poor fool, like, trying to take your money is like, hey, what do you want? He's got a job to do, or she. And then, all the kids can't see the menu, and they're like, I don't know. So they freak out for like, forever, and it takes a long time. Nobody walks up there and is like, chop, chop. Nobody. Let's make Ice Cream Shop Tycoon, John, and I will make it a miserable experience for the entire gaming populace.
That'd be fun. You keep complaining about like the establishment, but what about ice cream itself?
Ice
like,
cream
if
itself is
like
delicious.
If I got you like a tub of dryers, would you be like, ooh?
No, ice cream
thanks.
itself, I like a good vanilla bean. I'm a butter pecan fan. I like caramel and butterscotch, no problem. I make it at home, great. We'll get the ice cream, we'll get all the stuff, that's fine. I don't like the experience of going to get ice cream.
I imagine this is colored greatly by having 3 children. With
Family, yeah. I can do a lot of things myself, and I don't get very angry at myself, which sounds narcissistic and insincere. However, yeah, when you got to care for people, like, I just like, hey, let's get this going. Oh, do not get me started on hot chocolate when you're going to see like Christmas lights. Second least favorite thing to do in my life You got to go to the Christmas lights and you drive your car through 'em. Have you ever done this?
No, maybe. I don't know. What are you
All right.
talking about?
Imagine like
Go
a
to the
big like
lights?
park or forest, a park that you can drive through, like a city park or a national park. And for the holidays, they put up tons of Christmas lights and they'll tune an AM radio station. I'm not making this up, like Christmas music. So you drive in your car, you don't get out, you just slowly drive with your lights off, and it's like a parade through the lights. Right? Not a huge fan. Still has the lines, doesn't have the heat. But then what they do is they sell hot chocolate with no lid, man. And they give you the hot chocolate with no lid and they put it in my car. And I have the kids. And, and you're going through this and it's in a park, so there's speed bumps. So how do you go? You're already going 2 miles an hour. How do you go a half mile an hour? And you're gonna, the hot chocolate's going everywhere.
That makes sense. I mean, no lid. What are they doing?
So it can cool. You got to have your mittens on with the, whatever. I don't know. Yeah.
You should just, I don't know, crack a window, like reach down, get some snow, and plop it in there.
I'm gonna crack a window and I'm gonna throw 4 orders of hot chocolate out the window. That's what's gonna happen. It's gonna come in one side. I'm gonna give them the money, and then chink out the window. Yeet.
Sounds kind of nice though. I mean, if people aren't burning themselves, we would do. It's kind of like a soft tradition, but my mom likes to. Like Christmas Eve, we go out at after dinner and just drive around the neighborhood and see all the lights in the neighborhood. Like people who do big honking, it's the whole front yard display kind of stuff. But yeah, we're not driving around with loose, open, hot chocolate containers.
Yeah, I swear next time they're gonna be like, here's you want a scoop of ice cream in your hot chocolate? And I'm gonna get out the car and I'm just gonna walk away. I'm gonna be like, no, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. All right, let's look at chat. LPK 425, good to see you, man. And then we've got Cat in chat as well. Getting the coffee cup lids. I might do that next time. I'll just have a little stash. I keep towels in my car at all times because you never know when a spill's about to happen. Pro tip. But I need some coffee lids too.
There you go. So Matt, what are we doing here today?
So today, I thought answer a few questions from some of our fans. So I put this out to some of our Discord community, some folks on Twitter, some various different fan followings that we've got, in kind of a live AMA. Now, you and I have both participated in AMAs on places like Reddit and that sort of thing, but I feel like a stream like this one's a good way for us to answer some fan questions about Mr. Run and Jump, about game dev, a little bit about our experiences making games. And so I've got a few of those queued up, and I'm gonna hit you. I'm gonna pepper you with a few of them. I might answer some of them myself, and then of course in the chat, if you've got questions for us, hit us up. We'll favor the questions in chat for sure. And then if we don't get to some of the questions that I pulled from Discord on this stream, maybe we'll hit those on the next one. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get into the game real quick, and I'm just gonna kind of do a leisurely stroll through Mr. Run and Jump, and then while I'm doing that, John, I'm gonna hit you with the first of these questions. So give me a second to get in here.
Yeah, definitely. Here, LPK 425. That's the Atari Discord. I'll see if I can. Maybe Cat's
gonna drop that in chat.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you get into
it, get a link to a Discord. I don't use Discord all that much.
There it is. So we've got that in chat. Once you join, that's Atari's general Discord, so you can interact however you'd like. But also, there's a separate channel just for Mr. Run and Jump. There's a channel for our last original property, Combinera, and other Atari games too. So you can check all those out. Yeah, man. All right, here I'm gonna start in classic mode, and I'm gonna get John. I'm gonna get you our first question for the day. So get your sharing cap on and get ready. Here comes question numero uno.
Once again, that is question 1. Number 1. Spanish Uno.
All
German.
right, there we go. Now we're
Eins.
sharing. Numero uno. All right, so where did the inspiration for the distinct art style and the music come from? We haven't talked much about the music, have we?
No, we haven't. I was just thinking about that, and I'm like, yeah, maybe we can talk about kind of the stuff we do with the music because it's kind of interesting. But yeah, so the the vibe for the game, kind of going off of last week's stream where I played a couple of the games that wound up inspiring Run and Jump. One of those was, of course, what we're looking at now, which is Run and Jump Classic, or this is this is the facsimile of Run and Jump Classic. But we had that as a base, which is pretty plain, with a couple of kind of key elements, right? So we have like the characters, we have the enemies, their general shape and vibe, and then we have this abstract platforming land with worlds based on like the colors of the rainbow. So that was kind of our jumping off point. And then like last week, I was talking about Combinera. The game we made for Atari before Run and Jump is a puzzle platformer where you play as a ball, and you play as many balls, and as you move them throughout the environment, you move all the balls together. The idea is to combine them all into one giant ball, I guess. But so that game, I think if you look at that game and then you look at Run and Jump, you see kind of the parallels there, right? Like it has a similar kind of, glowy kind of abstract environment, with kind of this neon kind of shine to it. That, meshed with kind of the rainbow aesthetic of classic Run and Jump is kind of, kind of like the through line, that gets us to here. But yeah, like Run and Jump, like I think at the beginning I was thinking of the game kind of like, I was thinking about Luminous, if you're familiar. It's like the
it's a puzzle game on like PlayStation. No, yeah, it's on a lot of platforms, isn't it?
It's on a lot of stuff. It was on PSP. It was like a PSP Tetris-like game, where it's like falling blocks and you rotate them. And but what's cool about that game is like, and it's got like a real kind of techno poppy kind of music track that goes in the background, and then as your score goes up in Luminous, it will occasionally like kind of like clear the screen, and then all of a sudden you're playing with a different visual aesthetic and like a different music track starts playing. So I was looking at that game, I'm like, because in my mind it's like, okay, if we can get like just these key elements of Run and Jump, it can kind of look like whatever we want. And I kind of have this like recurring idea in the back of my head, like if we ever get the chance to like do a sequel to like completely wipe this visual aesthetic clean and do like a whole fresh new one. It's like yet another like transformation, the realms of colors, something else. And as long as we kind of maintain those key thematic elements, the rainbow worlds and the key enemy shapes and stuff like that, it's really such an abstract world that it can kind of be anything. So I was kind of describing this to Phil Snowbarger when we were kicking off the project. And I'm like, hey, kind of go nuts, and this is ultimately what he came up with. He did here's a fun tidbit, I guess, is we there's some mock-ups out there somewhere where the game was like a kind of SNES style pixel art.
Sure.
And I'm like, it looked great, not to say like the art was bad, but I'm like, the whole point of this game is like that classic Run and Jump, gets transformed into this, neon kind of new, the modern age, right? Like, so I'm like, I don't want it to be like an homage to another classic console. I want it to be, hey, we're in the Neoverse, we are in, we are in like the modern era. So, but yeah, with that, and then music. I'm trying to think. I'm not like super great with music, so I'm not even entirely sure how I describe the music of it. It's kind of jazzy. It's a little poppy. We work with a local team here, Fat Bard, local to St. Louis, who've done. We've worked with a lot in the past. They do a lot of music for us, music and sound effects. But we gave them a copy of the demo, or we gave them an early build of the game, kind of described like the core themes and showed them some of the later levels, and we're like, here's what we're thinking, and so they came up with kind of this. We decided early on we didn't want to have like an 80s kind of synth feel, which might seem like what you do with this kind of neon glow 80s-ish aesthetic. But we're like, nah, that feels a little played, right? So
Sure.
we wanted something a little more unique flavor. And I really like what they were able to cook up with this.
Yeah, for sure.
And something interesting we do with the music, to another kind of tidbit I can give is, and if you played the Next Best demo, you might have noticed this, but we have one track per world, right? More or less. And then, so we broke it up into layers. So as you play 1-1, you're getting the first layer of the World 1 music. And then as you go to level 2 in World 1, you're getting the next layer added on top of it. So it's the same track, but it's got more depth, it's got more instrumentation, just more, more juiciness. It's the next step to the full track.
Right.
And then when you get to the third level of the world, you get the full track. So it winds up being kind of an economical way to approach things, where you have we have 6 worlds, so there's 6 tracks there, and then these guys are able to compose the tracks in such a way that it's like, okay, we can take off all these layers and elements, and then slowly bring them back on, and even though we only have 6 full tracks, we can stretch it out and kind of have what's 6 times 3? I'm so tired.
18?
18. We have 18 tracks,
What?
kind of.
Yeah, I think when I remember talking with the team about it, I was using a lot of like visual language. Like, we want the music to be neon, we want the music to be electric and vibrant, and it's like, that's how I communicate. Man, I've been an artist all my life, so the Fat Bard guys do a great job of converting my visual language into audio.
Definitely.
No, I like our stuff. It has a bit of there's something, well, it's all those visual words, right? It's like there's something like electric about it. There's something a little bit neon vibe to it, and they did such a great job with it.
I was watching a documentary about Mel Brooks years ago, and there's a little tidbit in there where he's like, maybe it was someone described, I forget what it was, but it was like, he won't just give you like stage instructions. He'll come up and he'll be like, can you do it again, but give it a little more kapowie, can you give it a little more zip, like very like onomatopoeia kind of, descriptions for you.
Sure.
And, sometimes that kind of stuff works.
We need more oomph, Johnny. Can you give it a little bit more zing pow?
Totally, right?
Yeah.
Like,
No, I mean, I get that too, because I think like, sorry, I'm trying to get platinum time and say something intelligent at the same time. And I don't think both can happen. Frequently it's up to the artist to interpret the POW, but if you say, hey, it just needs a little bit more something, what do you got for me?
Mhm.
I almost like that feedback myself, because if somebody who's not an artist tells me, hey, that house needs to be red, I may challenge their decision. I may say, well, why? Like, what's what's telling you that that house color even needs to change? Like, what's the problem? And if they say, I
Mhm.
don't know, it just needs a little bit more oomph, I might realize that, oh, okay, the contrast is wrong, the saturation is wrong, the vibrance is wrong, you know, all these different things that I'm trained to adjust. So, you know, if somebody says, I don't know, it's missing something, it just needs a little bit more kapowie, I kind of like that feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Some
me
some
too.
don't. I've worked with a lot of different developers over the years, and some are like, no, no, what does kapowie mean? Because they don't want to do it 5 times, and I understand that too.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
in fact, if I start telling our team, hey, this game needs more kapowie, it'll probably only take 3 times before they say, no, shut up. What do you want? Because you know,
It
all it takes
it's
is
a
you know, one working day after 8 p.m. to be like, all right, I'm sick of kapowie. Just tell me what you want so I can get out of here on time today. Yeah,
it is a delicate, balance you got to strike.
sure.
But yeah, like me, like I like to let when it comes to like music and like art direction and stuff like that, stuff I'm only so versed in, right, as a programmer.
Sure.
I like to let the artists do the art, right? and so when I give feedback, I try to limit it to stuff that I feel like that I can kind of summarize kind of succinctly as like, here's a problem that I'm facing and I need it solved, right? So it'll be like, well, when you make the skullkin this color, you can't actually see them all that well in this environment, and it actually makes, disrupts the gameplay experience. I try to like come up with actionable items like that, but
Sure.
um, otherwise, I'm down to just kind of, more or less say like, hey, you do your thing,
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I remember there was even one that you and I had well, I'd say it sounds like a disagreement, but really it was just, hey, we got to solve this problem together. Where, you know, as an artist, and I wasn't doing any art for the game, but that's like usually how my feedback shows up is through the art. But let me see if I can find one real quick. But there were like these decorative bits that well, I don't want to blow my time, but like these flowers and stuff occasionally you'll see in the game that sit in the foreground, because as an artist, we really want that depth. We want a very clear middle ground where the player plays, a clear background that can help set the theme and the style of the game, as clouds and trees and other stuff, and then the foreground that can help make it feel like, all right, I'm viewing a 3D world, even if it's a 2D presentation. And games like
mhm.
Donkey Kong Country do a great job of this, but in some of our really early versions, we had so many of those foreground elements that it was blocking Mr. Run and Jump even from being seen in some cases. And so,
Mm,
like, I'm like, I want depth. And, you know, some feedback that I remember from you was like, yeah, but we can't like cover up the player, because if you just can't see where you're at, then all of a
right.
sudden the core mechanic is threatened because, you know, hey, I would have made that jump, except there's this big flower in the way that I can't do anything about. So, um, yeah, I think that was like one of our very early, like, all right, we got to find the right path through, and we found it. It was good. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Definitely.
All right, ready
Um,
for question numero dos?
you know it.
Here comes number dos. Where did what was your biggest difficulty when it came to refining Run and Jump's advanced movement?
Biggest difficulty when it came to refining Run and Jump. That's the game we're playing right here, Mr. Run and Jump. Advanced movement. That question again. What was biggest difficulty? Um, it's a good question. It's
Is there a particular move that you feel like you messed with the most? Like the dive, the leap, the wall slide?
I feel like we wound up going through a lot of iterations, I think, on all this stuff, and some of the stuff like maybe a little later than it should, right? I think it winds up being there's with a game like this, with a platformer. I've said this maybe in a couple different places, but people, at least when I was in school, people kind of viewed platformers kind of like almost like, yeah, it's baby's first game, right? Like or like a baby developer's first game that I'm making, where it's just like, whatever, you move and you jump and it's just a constant downward for gravity and you whatever, like, easy. But to get something really precise and really fluid feeling, there's a whole lot of nuance. So I remember kind of trying to break this down in like our early design documents of like, we call them leeway systems, right? Where okay, like your character is falling and they, you hit the jump button and okay, you're technically not on the ground yet. You're technically 3 pixels in the air, but
Sure.
visually it looks so close. It looks like you should be able to jump. So we detect some of that stuff and okay, we make you jump, right? Even though technically you're not on the ground and technically you shouldn't be able to jump. Same thing with like a wall jump. Like, okay, I'm like 2 pixels away from actually touching the wall and I hit the jump button. We assume that you want a wall jump and just let you wall jump anyway. Coyote time is another good one. Sure. Where it's like, that's like a reference to like Looney Tunes, Wile E. Coyote, how he like walks off a cliff and then looks down and then looks at the camera and then then he falls. But in this context, it refers to like you walk off of, you've just walked off of a ledge and you hit the jump button, and even though technically you're not touching the ground, you shouldn't be able to jump. You only walked off the ledge like 0.2 of a second, and so that's your coyote time, that 0.2 seconds that we let you jump anyway, even though you're not touching the ground.
Right.
So it's all that kind of like really fine nuance and it's stuff that we would, even beyond that, we would discover it, months into having developed kind of a movement system that we were happy with. Is like, oh, actually, this feels kind of weird when I, weird stuff like, hey, when I do a long jump, how does like the momentum scale back down? How does your velocity scale back down to like your normal movement speed? How fast should that, process be? Like your long jump, you go so much faster, you land, you have to go back to your normal movement speed, but we can't just snap it back to that because then that feels like someone's like, stepping on the brakes. So there's just
a lot of like testing, like iterative testing that gets you to that right number that feels good, or is there some math that helps get you started on the right foot, so to speak?
For a long time I was just opening up a test scene and I would set a value and then just go with it. I'd be like, okay, I'm messing with the long jumps today. So I would open up a test scene and just do long jumps over and over again. And we have a certain set of variables where I can tweak mid-air time or gravity or your speed, your horizontal speed, your turn back speed, like stuff like that. And I would just long jump over and over again. Adjust it like, I'm going to make this half a unit less. Now I'm going to make it a quarter unit more. I'm going to make it like a third of this, Sure. And really just kind of tweaking it to where, me in that moment was like, this feels good.
Gotcha.
But the thing with that, I kind of found I wound up kind of undoing some of that, and instead I opted to kind of keep. So we wound up having like when you do something like that, you wind up having like all these different variables for all these different jumps are all totally different from one another. Where it's like, okay, the horizontal speed on the wall jump is 0.289537, but the the speed of a normal jump is 0.5892, and it winds up being kind of like nonsense numbers that felt good to me at the time, and then I would come back to the game and I would play it again, and I'm like, what did I do to this long jump? It feels terrible. So kind of what I wound up doing, I kind of came to this where I'm like, I want to kind of have like a little more of a standardized approach where I'm like, okay, if a movement state is meant to be slower than your normal movement speed, I kind of want it to be like a half, a third, or a quarter, or like 3/4, like some kind of like set increments, or like the long jump is faster than your normal movement speed, so I want it to be like 1.5 times, or I want it to be 2 times faster. So I kind of cleaned everything up, and I have if we use like the normal like movement speed and like the normal jump as like our base, all of the other states you could be in, like the rolling, the wall jumping, long jumping, high jumping, like all those speeds and variables are kind of set kind of standardized values, like I say, like a half, a quarter, a third, 2 times, 3 times, like whatever. Sure. And I felt like that kind of would strengthen maybe the kind of the innate kind of understanding. I felt like that would kind of just feel more natural to the player, instead of like I'm playing the game and the character speed is technically going all over the place. Like every state I'm in is a different speed value. Now it's like across all your movements, it's like a couple different values. And I felt like that just would ingrain in the player a little more firmly, like a better sense of how this character is moving.
Sure.
So I hope that kind of makes sense, right? But
for sure.
All about just trying to build up that like innate sense of the character's movement.
Yeah, feels great. I was playing through 1-2 just a minute ago while you're talking about all the movement stuff, and then now I'm playing like 1-3, and we didn't actually get to be on similar streams together where we're having the speedrun contest going. Like, I think the reason why I speedrun 1-1 only is because I'm a big wuss. Like 1-2 and 1-3 are like, they're tough. They have these big long rooms where like, there's you die. I mean, you're gonna lose 10 seconds from a death in some of these bigger rooms, but
it's true. There's a couple run killers in here.
Yeah,
no, maybe not.
Even the last one, like I was getting like a minute 12 and stuff, or minute 20 just now. I was like, that felt like a pretty like decent run, and I'm getting like silver instead of. I mean, I'm not even close to gold. These are pretty tough.
It's tough. I got sub 1 minute last stream on 1-4 or 1 Void. I mean,
I was gonna play Void next. I don't think I played Void on the stream yet, so I'm gonna give that one a go for sure. All right, well, good answer to the biggest difficulty question. This one I hope is a play on words. But what has been the biggest leap for the team going from Combinera to Run and Jump? So what's been the biggest leap? A difference between those two games? Something unique about Mr. Run and Jump, I suppose, that was different than Combinera? What do you think the biggest leap for the team was?
I think going from a puzzle game to a platformer like this, I think there is a level of scrutiny that these levels and this movement system require that maybe a puzzle platformer doesn't quite, where Combinera, like, it's not so much about how the character moves and controls, like not to the degree that it matters in run and jump. And with a puzzle game, you're crafting such a different experience, right? You're not necessarily crafting something that feels good, quote unquote, like kinetically. It's more of like, is this how are we leading the player to a solution, or how are they thinking through this, in a way that feels good or feels like you're getting those aha moments.
Sure.
So I think with these, with this movement system and with these levels, like I say, there's just a lot more scrutiny that goes into it, where we just do iterations of this, whole levels, like individual parts of levels, like over and over again, because
Sure.
I'd just be like, hey, look, like, this isn't quite right, this just doesn't quite feel as good as it needs to feel, or it doesn't quite play to the game's strengths or whatever. So it just like I say, you're with a game, you're kind of you're building the plane as it's flying, right?
Sure.
But in doing that, you have to also kind of feel out, like, actually this plane flies the best, actually this plane doesn't turn very well, or doesn't or what I mean, like you're kind of like feeling out what is a good feeling level in run and jump.
Oh no.
So yeah, just kind of that. I tend to think of games kind of in a if there's two broad categories. I think of, like, there's like a lean back and a lean forward game, or like something like a puzzle game, or like a city builder, or like The Sims, or something that doesn't, like an Animal Crossing, or something that doesn't require like kinetic kind of fast reflexes and timing, as like a lean back game. Like, it's like, like I can, not that those games aren't stressful or aren't, whatever, but it's just like what is demanded of the player in terms of like interacting with the game.
For sure. Well, no,
so
I've been playing a ton of Stardew Valley, and I would consider it a very much lean back game that's fun and entertaining. But yeah, at no point did I have to, like, look at me right now, man. I'm like narrowing in, man. The void's on my butt, so I'm definitely leaning in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we did going from Common Era to Run and Jump, is we made a lean back game, and then now we're making a lean forward game, and we're kind of feeling out what does that mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, and just so yeah, that's kind of, I guess, that's kind of the biggest leap, I guess, when going from Common Era to Run and Jump.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I feel like from my perspective, we did a lot of levels in Combinera. We had 300 eventually we're in the retail release. This one we have so many fewer levels, but the little segments in each had to get tuned to such a degree that we spent way more time developing, designing, and iterating on the levels than we ever planned for. So I think that was like one of the biggest leaps. We still spent a lot of time on Combinera's levels, but I feel like we had a better, assessment, because we made a handful of those levels before. With Run and Jump, we went into it having developed Classic, but we hadn't like made 15 levels for, Mr. Run and Jump already, and we're just making more. Whereas we'd made a couple levels in Combinera in a demo that felt pretty good. So we had a little bit more, I think, awareness of what we wanted out of those levels. So that felt like a pretty big leap to me. When I look at like the guesses, as they were, whenever you're making a video game, you have educated guesses on what it's going to take time wise and staff wise. But I feel like I underestimated the levels quite a bit. And I think anybody making a platformer would probably underestimate how long it takes to develop those things. So yeah, I thought that was a pretty good leap.
Yeah, it really is a thing of just like, yeah, I'm going to, you know, can this gap be 3 tiles wide?
Sure.
Like, not quite. Yeah, can it
Yeah.
be 4? Like, it's a little better. How about 5? No, it's too much. Like,
Yeah.
very much like, yeah, like really feeling it out
Sure.
and just using your best, using your senses and yeah, trying to cook up the best level you can.
Sure.
The best feeling thing you got.
Gotta make it taste good, John.
That's what we try to do.
Now, unlike ice cream, I love getting sandwiches. Getting sandwiches is a delightful experience.
Dude, I love a good sandwich.
That there is an inside joke. Anybody in the St. Louis area, ask me and John later our favorite sandwich spot. And
Dude, have you ever been to Joya's?
I don't. I know of it. It's a deli, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
a
going to
deli,
be
and
consistently listed in like the top delis in St. Louis. Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, it's like a local. There's like 3 of them,
Sure.
or 2 or 3 of them, I forget. But yeah, it's like they have their specialty is the hot salami. And so you can go and get this hot salami sandwich. You get it toasted. You get it toasted on cheese garlic bread. You get the St. Louis Prevel.
Ooh.
You get I like a horsey mayo on there.
Who
But that's
doesn't
just
like
me.
a horsey mayo?
Man, it rocks. That's a special occasion kind of sandwich.
Mr. Run and Jump 2, we'll have Found Leap, and then Mr. Run and Jump has to chase his horse named Mayo. I'm here for it. All right, I've got another question for you, and then I've got I think one more question that just came through that I think is pretty fun. But let me check anything in the chat. Some notes from Kat. Math is hard. I agree. That's why I went to art school. Editor accessible code. Yeah, I mean, like editor accessible code, like being able to tweak variables like as fast as we do is, man, I've been in this industry about 20 years and the last like 10 have been bliss just because having tools like Unity or game engines like Game Maker or others, or even just a mindset development wise of making, editor and variable accessible code that, if you want to change like a move velocity setting, you can tweak that as a designer more quickly than, how we used to do things, 10 years prior. We weren't exactly using Unity to make Game Boy games when I got started, or even PC games. Yeah.
Yeah, I
hugely
mean,
valuable.
here's a question for you. I mean, I guess if you're an artist on a project like that, maybe you can't speak to it necessarily, but like, I know for like Run and Jump Classic, I have to, if I'm going to tweak like the movement speed or something like that, I have to, completely recompile the whole game and run it in an emulator. But, back then, I mean, was that a similar process, or were there some shortcuts, or what was like your emulator, or I guess just your editor process, like, for a Game Boy Advance game?
So we got better over time, but the very first Game Boy game that we made, I couldn't even use an art tool to edit my palette entries. So like you make a graphic and that graphic accesses a palette, and that palette has rows of 16 colors and all that. And we were working on a game that was for the Game Boy Advance, and it was just classic board games converted over, like chess, checkers, and backgammon. So we weren't doing like much game design. Those games were already designed. But we had to do a lot of translation of art. We had to make our own checkers and our own chess pieces. And, we did a little bit of a battle chess style where you could get themed pieces, like a sci-fi themed board set and such. But no, I was editing the palettes because all images on screen had to have a shared palette. So you'd make a graphic, you'd open it up in Photoshop, you'd open up all your graphics and make sure you attached one palette to all these. And it was almost like kind of like the atlasing process now. And they accessed all the palettes. But to shuffle let's say you wanted to change, imagine like a chess piece with a bow tie. I know it sounds weird, but a chess piece with a bow tie, and the bow tie is red. But if you're the green team, you want that same graphic to display a green pixel instead of a red one. Well, you can do that with palette swapping. At any rate, we had to use Notepad, and then with Notepad, we'd literally type in different numbers, and then we'd pass that to the programmer, and he'd import it into his system, and that's how we could, change some of those values. But I didn't get to see my changes unless we made a build, burned it to a card, which took time, and also interrupted the programmer, right? While they're burning to a card, almost like burning an old DVD. It took, I don't know, I can't remember now, but let's just say that takes 10 minutes. Like, even that slows you down, Like, imagine if you want to go to a website and it took you 10 minutes to load it. You wouldn't go, right? Like, I want to see this information now, like we're used to it. So it made it really hard to tweak and tune those things, or at least really time consuming early on. Fast forward maybe 5 years, and one of the last Game Boy Advance games that we did, I don't even know if we had these tools on the Game Boy, John. I think it was when we got to the DS. Nintendo delivered a tool called Nitro, which was a first-party Nintendo animation tool. And it would allow you to virtualize some of these things to where you could see your animations play and you could assign certain variables. So like even run and jump idling here, let's say that idle loop takes, let's say it takes 20 frames over, a 30 frame loop or something. And some of those frames get reused. Like, I couldn't see that as an artist in my early games. It wasn't until I was on the DS where I could use tools like Nitro to even see how it looked graphically. So yeah, it was very time consuming, man. And I think some of our earlier games could have been way better if we just had a faster feedback loop. If we could see what we were making, if we could tweak what we were implementing. So many of our games were just like, man, that's as good as we can get it, man. We got a milestone in a week. We got to be street. And there was no patching. There was no live patching. There was no, you had to cram it into the box and get it to the store, and that was it. Maybe you'll get lucky enough for a reissue. The John Deere game that we worked on was like a Harvest Moon game style, farming game. It came out, it did okay, but then Farmville came out on Facebook, and everybody loved farming games, and so that game got a reissue. It got so popular, Walmart wanted it back in stores. And so we got to make a second version of the game and where we fixed bugs and did other stuff like that. Yeah. So it's still the same game. It's just like, oh, here's another retail run. Well, we fixed these 10 bugs and now players get to have a better version of the game.
Man, yeah. I'll tell you, there is something so nice about knowing that, like, hey, look, if something's completely busted, we can do a patch,
Yeah,
it won't. It hopefully won't be that big a deal. I think if I was like 10 years older, I was in the industry back when you were. I don't know if I could hack it. I'd be just a complete ball of anxiety. I'd be like, everything's gonna be broken.
Oh my gosh,
I won't be able to do anything about it.
It's so much of it was broken, John. Like, it's why. Okay, famously. GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64 game everybody loves, but there's like that one area, there's like a room off to the side in the first level or something where people are like, oh, this is just something the devs had in but like didn't use. Like, you wouldn't risk taking that stuff out. Like, what if you broke something? You're just like, screw it, leave it in, push it way over here, and don't anybody touch it ever. So it's I
always get whenever we like submit a milestone or a build or whatever, there's always a twinge of horror in me that I'm like, did I leave on like the debug interface? Like, oh god, like it's just,
oh my gosh, yeah. All right,
not for the faint of heart,
right? There was another story similar to that I was gonna share, but it's kind of it's escaped me now. Something about shipping. Oh, that John Deere game I was talking about, that farming game. The first release of that game, you get ribbons, awards for stuff, kind of like modern day achievements. This was on the DS, so I think the Xbox 360 was out and achievements were getting more like popular, but they certainly weren't on the DS. But we had kind of achievement style things in that game. And one of the achievements is get a gold medal or a blue ribbon or whatever the top prize was in all of the farming activities. And this meant, like, if you're going to farm 10 carrots, you have to farm, 10 like iridium level carrots or something, right? So you could get a bad ribbon and you could always increase it. Well, if you didn't get the blue ribbon the first try on all of them, it would not unlock the achievement for the ultimate blue ribbon, which was like get blue ribbons and everything, right? It would only take that first value and it would never overwrite it with a better score. So people would play this game for like 60 plus hours trying to get that final trophy, and they'd be like, yo, it doesn't work. And it is the worst bug to have. And so it was one of my cousins who had that game, and he's like, yo, I can't get this final thing, like what's happening? And I'm like, I hate to break it to you, bud, but like you're never ever gonna get this trophy ever because of this, unless you start over. You can start over, make sure you get blue ribbons first try, and then you'll be fine. But yeah, so we'd fix stuff like that in a reissue. But yeah.
Gotcha.
So,
wow.
Eesh. Tough gig, John.
At least like Twitter wasn't around back then. People couldn't just
right?
yell at you.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. I oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. Well, we got 10 minutes left in our planned stream. This is usually when I start speed running, but I've been kind of doing these a little bit, and I'd really like to ask you one more question, but I've got two more. So you're going to tell me, let's see. How can I make this the most abstract as possible? Pick between two fruits, apple or orange.
What?
Just pick between. It's going to determine which question I ask you. Yeah.
Orange.
Orange. All right. The orange question is, what retro game, or what old game as it's phrased here, do you think would make a great comeback as a modern version? Mr. Run and Jump, after all, is about taking, something that, is old and made new. What old game do you think could be?
This is a great question. So my opinion on like remakes and remasters and stuff like that is, I'm always like, if the game is really good, keep it as minimal as you can, like something like Resident Evil 4, that remake came out earlier this year. Resident Evil 4 was still great, right? And not to say like the remake is great as well, but I'm kind of like, that game was good when it was just like an up-res, or just to just get it out there, so people can play it easier. The things you want to remake and bring back are games that were kind of mediocre to begin with. Good ideas that weren't executed quite as well.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the question that was asked, but that's kind of that was the spark. That was the thought that was sparked in me when you asked that. But here I was thinking about. I took a shower this morning. I was thinking about Jumping Flash.
Think about what now? What is this game?
Jumping Flash.
Jumping Flash.
It was a PlayStation 1 launch game. I think it was a launch game, and it was it's a 3D platformer. It's a first-person 3D platformer.
Okay.
And you play as this robot rabbit character called Robbit, and you kind of go around in a it's a very Japanese game. So you go around in this poppy, kind of like that irreverent, almost like Katamari kind of Japanese style.
Gotcha.
It's a world like that, and you jump around. It's a first-person 3D platformer, and you get 3 jumps. You can go burr, burr, burr. So your range of movement is pretty nuts.
Okay.
And you go and you collect carrots, and then when you collect all 5 carrots and land on the platform, the level ends, and there you go. But I'm like, man, I love that game. I played it maybe last year, and it's good. It's got tank controls, which people are pretty mixed on.
Got it.
So I think if you took Jumping Flash and you could really like clean it up with like a high resolution. Like you'll make kind of that art style really, really pop, and you will, clean up the controls a little bit. Give it maybe a more modern style of first-person camera, and I think maybe add in like a dash or like a boost or so, something to make you move a little bit faster. And I'm like,
Sure.
man, I think that would kill it. I
Be
think that would
nice.
be great.
Like that answer. I'm glad you picked orange, John. I like this question.
That's good.
Actually, I've gotten this question before, and my answer is always the same. I would love to take the NES version of Kid Icarus and like totally
Mm.
rebuild the whole thing. Like, I don't know if I'd make it genre wise any different. I mean, I think Kid Icarus would be really interesting as like a Metroidvania style game, just because of all the Greek like treasures that inspired the game to begin with. But as I like
Mhm.
look at like Mr. Run and Jump, and then I look at it through like that platforming Kid Icarus gameplay, just with a little bit of like shooting, like giving Mr. Run and Jump a bow and arrow essentially would be kind of fun. And yeah, so I've answered that question a few times in the past, but I'd love to take the classic Kid Icarus and see that one remade. So
That's awesome.
cool. Well, we're getting close to our time. We'll need to be thinking about somebody to raid. And if there's any questions from the chat, I know that we've seen a few in here talking about some stuff. Looks like everybody got into the Atari Discord. Yeah, we don't keep a Graphite Lab one. I don't know. I've just not been in a community that I've put a lot of time behind, like separately for just Graphite Lab. We do have a Hive Jump Discord that was and is still have Hive Jump players in it, but not one just kind of abstractly for Graphite Lab. So anyone in the chat or watching the stream that wants to follow us and engage on Discord, go through Atari's. It's there linked in the chat. And you can also find it on MrRunandJump.com as well. Otherwise, if you've been enjoying the stream and enjoying this, what'll be a VOD later on, go to Steam, check out Mr. Run and Jump, throw it on your wish list. The game comes out July 25th. That's a Tuesday. And then the 2600 version that we've talked about more than once will go on pre-order later this month as well. So two different ways to show your support for Graphite and for Mr. Run and Jump. Yeah.
Yes, and yeah, even if like you're not planning on buying the game, just go whatever. Just wish listing truly it does it boosts us in like Steam's back end, right? So even if you're like whatever, like Run and Jump's cool, but it's not the game for me. Just do us a favor, just hit that wish list and get us up there. If you're like, I want these guys to do good. I like these guys, but I don't know about the game. Just help us out. Whatever you gotta do, however you gotta justify it to yourself. Just turn on Steam. Just do it. Come on. What are you doing? What are you doing still here? Don't listen to me. Get out of here. Go to Steam and press the wish list button.
Right. Like and subscribe. And all kidding aside, you should follow us on Twitch. We've enjoyed doing this. We're going to keep doing this. We've got a couple of weeks before the game launches, but after that, we've got more exciting things coming out from Graphite Lab. So we may not be, we may shuffle schedule a little bit, but the plan is for John and I to keep chatting and keep talking Graphite Lab and Run and Jump. And once the game hits, we'll be able to talk about what life is like on the other side as well. Because developing games is fun, but launching games is a wild experience, everybody. And I don't think we did a little bit with Hive Jump, but I don't think we did as much of a Common Era's launch live like this. Talking through the process of actually launching a game. So that week of the 25th, plan on tuning in. John and I will be streaming a couple of times that week. May have some fun guests. We may get on some indie dev buddies. Maybe cool to have like our composers on the stream, that sort of things. If you have interest in doing music, that might be one to tune into. And yeah, with that, we're pretty much at time. Kat, do we have a raid target? Cat's still selecting a raid target. Still selecting. I did
All
not
good.
get any platinum.
But,
No new platinum for me today, John. I wasn't very good at
No?
speed running. I
well, okay.
I
You
put
were
I put a silver on one too.
a silver. Ooh.
Cat's
You
got
were
somebody.
you're still fuming about ice cream or whatever.
Yeah, it's true.
You're still like, God, I hate it so much. It's
All
so
right.
sticky. It gets everywhere.
All right, Cat's got us rating. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll catch you later. See you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.